And welcome to the BBC News at 1. The Governor of the Bank of England has issued a grim warning about the impact of the Eurozone crisis on Britain. Sir Mervin King says the situation is extraordinarily serious and threatening, and he urged banks to brace themselves for a potential Eurozone collapse. Sir Mervin and other financial regulators are now urging banks to set aside more money to protect themselves, and, if necessary, they say bankers' bonuses should be slashed. Here's Simon Gompertz.
A more sober mood today after a wave of relief spread across the world's share markets yesterday. Yet again, they're thinking what horrors may lurk around the corner. The respite had come after the Federal Reserve in the US led central banks in an attempt to head off another credit crunch. It stepped in where others feared to tread by making billions of cheap dollars available to Europe's cash-strapped banks. The new Financial Policy Committee in the Bank of England, charged with protecting the banking system, made it clear there was a danger of what the bank governor called a systemic crisis.
No one who looks at the current position could surely deny that it is extraordinarily serious and threatening, and therefore those with responsibilities to deal with it really do need to take action.
The bank's financial stability report calls for moves to withstand the storms which might come from the Eurozone. What's being recommended is that banks should limit bonuses and dividends and consider raising more capital from investors to bolster their reserves. But they should do that without reducing lending to businesses and households, because that would simply add to the jitters which are undermining the economy. Those jitters threaten to add to the woes of British households, warned this week that they'll be no better off in 2015 than they were in 2002. 13 years of stagnation. David Cameron said again the euro's problems threatened to make things worse.
If the euro fell apart, what you would see is a very steep decline in the GDP, the economic growth of all countries in Europe, including Britain.
Speaking to the European Parliament, the new head of the European Central Bank said Eurozone political leaders had little time left to restore confidence.
A credible signal is needed to give ultimate assurance over the short term.
President Sarkozy of France will try to raise spirits later today with a speech in advance of a summit with Germany on the 9th of December, another make-or-break meeting for the euro. But nervousness here is increasing over how this apparently never-ending crisis will affect jobs and family finances. A widely followed survey of industry has just warned that manufacturers face a bleak winter. Simon Gompertz, BBC News.
Let's speak now to our chief economics correspondent, Hugh Pims. So this must be the most serious warning yet from the Governor of the Bank of England.
Well, indeed, Sophie. I've been to a few of these media conferences over the years, and central bankers, particularly the Bank of England, use very cautious language. You need to sometimes decode what they're saying, but no decoding needed whatsoever there. You heard the clip from Sir Mervin. Extraordinarily serious and threatening is the environment he was talking about. One of his colleagues said it was exceptionally perilous. And what they mean is the Eurozone financial crisis shows no signs of unwinding. If anything, it's got worse in the last couple of weeks. And if British banks don't prepare, they could be in for an extremely nasty shock. So he's urging them, as you heard there from Simon's report, to set aside more money for a rainy day, capital as it's known, and if necessary, cutting bankers' bonuses and cutting dividends. That won't be very popular with the banks. And there's no power yet from this Financial Policy Committee to force this on the banks. So it's going to be very interesting to see what their reaction is. But Sir Mervin leaving no illusions here about the severity of the crisis and what it means for our financial system.
And what does it mean for the UK economy?
Well, I think if it gets worse, you heard the Prime Minister there, then it has a severe effect on the British economy if the Eurozone goes into a recession, possibly even a deep recession. The key thing is, are we entering a so-called credit crunch? Now, the Governor said we weren't yet in the UK, but there's always that risk, and that's when banks have to rein in, start hoarding their capital and not lending. And if they start doing that in a big way, that is going to impact on the availability of mortgages and the availability of lending to businesses and so on. That's just what the Bank of England doesn't want. It's urging banks not to stop lending, but we're obviously in a very delicate position.
Indeed, Hugh. Thank you very much.